Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Thank you all for tuning in to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Evan Worley, and we are back with another episode. Happy last week of the season for everybody out there. This is the moment it seems like we've all been waiting for. You know, we have 7 of the 16 teams locked into the postseason, 5 in the AL. We got 2 solidified in the National League, just the Dodgers and the Padres. You know, it's been a really short season. I mean, obviously that's, you know, that's like an obvious statement. It's been a short season because there's only 60 games in the year. But it flew by to the point where, you know, it was like this was such a long year, but it seemed like, you know, from when this whole like shutdown happened all the way till when baseball actually started, it seemed like it was so long. Like, just an incredibly long time where we didn't know, you know, obviously there was the what's going to happen, like what's going to do this, what's with this, what's with that, you know, and then baseball finally started, and then it was just like everything's been in overdrive. Like, it just seems like the end of the year is just like zoomed past us. And you know, this year in baseball has been, you know, pretty nuts, just for playing, like just playing wise, you know, when I'm like, just by, you know, what teams have been good, what teams have been bad. Like, a lot of teams that we expected to be really good were not, and then a lot of teams that we thought were going to be really bad also weren't. Like, if you were telling me that this is the last week of the season and the Seattle Mariners versus the Houston Astros was going to be a huge series to determine, you know, if Houston's going to even miss the playoffs, like, I would have said that you were absolutely nuts, you know, but here we are. You know, the Seattle Mariners are 4 games back of the Houston Astros, and tonight they are starting a series. Wait, today is the 21st. So tonight they're starting off a series, a 3-game set at home versus the Houston Astros. You got Lance McCullers Jr. versus Marco Gonzalez, Framber Valdez versus L.J. Newsome, and Zach Greinke versus Nick Margevicius. Wow, that's a very confusing name to say. But this 3-game series, if Seattle can come back and somehow sweep the Houston Astros, they have 2 games in the season left against the Oakland Athletics, who have already clinched. They've already, you know, locked up their playoff spot. They're already the number 1 team in the American League West. So, that being said, they already have their home field advantage locked up in the first round before they go into the bubble. So, what's really their draw of going in, like, to play the Houston Astros? Now, contrary to that, you know, you have Justin Verlander, who made noise this weekend by, you know, going on his Instagram and saying that, you know, he's done for Tommy John surgery, so he's done for the rest of this year, and probably done for the majority of next season, if not all of next season. So, you know, it's like, the Houston Astros are, they're not an easier target in the postseason because they still have that massive lineup, but their pitching is going to be a little easier. let's go check out their ending of the season. So they got and then they got the Texas Rangers. So the Texas Rangers, the Texas Rangers could play spoilers against the Houston Astros this year. Let's see what let me do a little more of a dive and see how they've fared against the Texas Rangers this year. So have they even lost a single game is pretty much what I'm going to look for. Yeah, they have. Their first game against Texas this whole year, they lost. So, it's not that... They've lost actually many games against Texas. Well, not many. They've lost 2. Sorry, it got kind of jumbled. But, they've lost 2 of their 6 games against the Texas Rangers. And, if the Texas Rangers go in and they beat the Houston Astros, especially, with their pitching staff, like as thin as it is right now, and they pull off like the massive upset, and somehow the Seattle Mariners are getting into the postseason, would that not be the most insane 2020 baseball thing ever? I mean, we just saw the San Diego Padres clinch for the first time since 2006, which I will get to that in the next segment. The next segment, I'm going to talk about, what was going on in the world the last time the San Diego Padres made it to the playoffs, not just the World Series, but the playoffs. Like, they're legitimate World Series contenders. The last time they made it to the playoffs, they were not World Series contenders. But, I'm definitely going to be going over that because there was a lot of things where I was looking at it like, oh my God. I honestly couldn't believe it, just how far the world has changed in the past, 14 years. I mean, that's pretty much a given, but my God, there was a lot of throwbacks. But going back to this Seattle Mariners thing, it's like the playoff odds for the Seattle Mariners are at 1.5% to make the postseason. 1.5%. And you may think, 1.5%, they're definitely not making it. But, I mean, not to go back to the NBA, because I bring the NBA up kind of a lot in this. Sorry for all the people. But, Oklahoma City Thunder, 0.2% chance. Like, legit 0.2%. And, they were going to... and not only did they make the playoffs, they were very, 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 competitive in the postseason. Almost won the first series against the Astros. Or, not the Astros, the Rockets. But, so it's not, it's not far-fetched to think that the Seattle Mariners can make the postseason this year. I mean, you look over at the, Then you look over at the National League, you got 6 teams. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say 6. I'll bring 6 in here. So you have the Phillies. Reds, Brewers, Giants, Mets, and Rockies, all fighting for 4 playoff spots. So far, the playoffs right now, you got the 3 division winners. You got the San Diego Padres who are in it. Then you got Miami, St. Louis, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, and then Milwaukee. Cincinnati, Milwaukee, and San Francisco are all tied for that 8th seed. You got 3 teams tied for the 8th spot. Cincinnati, incredible pitching. And, a lot of teams, a lot of people thought they were going to be the favorites to take the Central this year, the up-and-coming, just absolute startup team that was going to kill everyone. Then you had the Milwaukee Brewers, who were their one question mark this year was going to be pitch. Well, I won't say one question mark. There was definitely a couple. One being, the pitching staff and how they were going to fare. And then number 2 was how Christian Yelich was going to do, because everything in, the warm-up scrimmages was Christian Yelich was struggling pretty bad, and then nobody expected the San Francisco Giants to do absolutely anything, and then it turns out Mike Yastrzemski is a borderline MVP candidate. So, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be decided this week, and it's absolutely crazy the fact that we have all this stuff going on. We have one small little week left in baseball, or the regular season, I should say, because actually, 8 days from now, I think September 29th is the first game. I'm recording this on Monday the 21st, so yeah, we got 8 days. 8 days until the playoff starts. We got 9 spots that needs to be filled. This is absolutely insane. But before I go dive more into that, let's go talk about the wild, like, crazy stuff that, was happening this weekend. There was a few major news stories that, kind of hit the scene this year, or this weekend. And one of them, I'm trying to pull up the video here. What is it? So the, Citi Field had a fire going on with the Mets and Braves games, and nothing really happened. Like, no one stopped playing. No one really did anything. It was fire outside of Citi Field in New York. That was a tweet by Jacob Wyckoff. Nothing stopping the Mets and the Braves. I heard that it was in the street behind Citi Field. So if the street behind Citi Field caught on fire, but it just looked like, the behind the Jumbotron there was just a massive fire. It doesn't seem like anything was really okay, or anything wasn't like over the top bad and everybody was okay. It wasn't the first time apparently that there was a fire at Citi Field, because in May 2018 a fire broke out in a display case in the Jackie Robinson Rotunda. It was much more serious fires. It was indoors. Thankfully, minimal damage was done, according to FanSided. So that's wild. Someone had a funny tweet saying that, Citi Field was on fire, and then they quote tweeted it and go, "No need to be alarmed. It's just the Braves offense," because it was, because we absolutely destroyed these guys. Another weird thing that happened this weekend was a fan scaled the side of the green monster to jump on to the overhang at at the Red Sox Yankees game and start throwing stuff on the field. The most insane thing ever. Not the most insane thing. I think the most insane thing was that the Yankees at the time were down 10-1 against Boston at that time. That was hands down the craziest thing. I did not think that Boston would even etch out a single win this season. They did avoid the sweep, which was nice. They even diced them up so bad that backup catcher Eric Kratz came into pitch and, had a knuckleball come in as low as 55 miles per hour. Nice. Anybody who comes in, whenever a catcher comes in and is just I'm just going to lob this up there and see what you can do with it, I'm all for that, because majority of the time they get more outs than they give up runs anyways. I've never seen a giant inning happen against against an outfielder or a catcher or whoever comes into pitch when, the pitchers are having a rough day on the mound. Am I in the minority on this? Does this happen all the time? I don't think it happens that frequently. I think that that's a pretty decent strategy. I would like to see, in the age of openers, just be okay, we're throwing Kevin Pillar, and just see what happens. If they came in with just an outfielder who was just lobbing lollipops all day, I wonder how many innings he could go with, a quality start underneath his belt. Could he get 4 innings? Because they say it takes one whole trip around the lineup to adjust. So that was the whole sabermetric thing about the opener, was they wanted to, just have a new pitcher go, all right, 3 outs, and then the second time, the lineup comes back around, boom, we'll throw in another guy. Granted, that doesn't work as often because, a lot of relievers can go 3 innings, such as, Sergio Romo being an opener for the Tampa Bay Rays when that first started. But let's get weird. This is the year to get weird. We were saying this before the season started. Just get weird. And I just want to see, a good team that would, be a pretty decent candidate for just throwing an opener. Obviously, the Pittsburgh Pirates are a pretty good one. Texas Rangers, the bad teams. Let's see the Angels do it. I would just love to see what would happen if you trotted Mike Trout out to the mound just for, hey, why don't you try your hand at pitching and just see how far you can go? I mean, obviously, that's the big, he's the best player in baseball. You just think he can do everything. I want to see what would happen. And, the Angels aren't making the playoffs. the Angels haven't been good since 2016, and even then they got waxed in the first round of the playoffs. Why not? Why not see what happens? Have a whole game where every position player throws. I think that would be so sick. Like if you had, like, you know, first inning Trout, second inning Rendon, third inning Justin Upton. Like, just go down the batting order and just throw position players and just see what happens. I think that would be hilarious, and I think most fans would tune in just for the unintentional, well, probably it's definitely intentional comedy that would happen. Just to see, like, Max Stassi up there trying to throw a slider. If even any of you know who Max Stassi is. Bring Johnny Giavotella out of retirement. That guy's like 5'2" with calves the size of my head. Have him out there. Have him kick it to home plate. Like, screw it. Like, the Angels, you guys need as much notoriety as you can get. Like, get people to watch your games, because the play on the field is not putting, you know, butts in the seats, or in, I mean, today's age, butts in front of the television or computer. I stream my games on my computer, but, you know, why not do that? Anyways, back to the Red Sox game. So apparently he scaled the back end of the Green Monster, hopped over, started yelling about some stuff. You know, he threw his hat on the field. You know, he almost started doing some push-ups. He threatened to jump on the batter's eye, which I thought was kind of funny. I don't know why he wanted to watch a Red Sox game this bad. I guess it was the one game that they were winning, and like probably in the third inning, he was like, you know what, I'm doing this. And then just went in there and started yelling. You know, all I have to say about this is, you know, like, we have like our whole like issues. People, whatever, have their issues with social whatever going on. I just want to say shout out to the cops, because they actually didn't arrest him. They just took him to a like mental facility to have him get checked to make sure he was good. Solid move by you, Boston Police Department. Solid move by you. Like, there's a lot of police departments that are screwing up, and there's some that are doing a great job, and that's just a good job. I think we need more of that. We do need more of that. Like, the dude, I don't think the dude needed to be arrested. He just needs to be like, dude, like, are you okay? And they took him and made sure that he was all right. I don't know what happened after that. I didn't read up on it. I hope I hope everything went okay. But, you know, I just wanted to give a little shout out to them. Good job by you. All right, everybody, I'm going to be taking a quick break, and I will be right back to just break down how long it really has been since we saw the San Diego Padres make it to the postseason.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, everybody, and we are back. So, I did a little bit of a deep dive, a deep dive into the past of the San Diego Padres. One thing that I thought was hilarious on BaseballReference.com as I went back through the years, they've actually went through two complete logo changes. So, if you guys remember, or are old enough to remember, when the San Diego Padres were, their logo was the home plate with the wave on it. That was their logo the last time that they made it to the postseason. So I am on their baseball reference page for 2006 for their stats. They finished 88-74, finished first in the NL West, which is the sad thing is, you know, they lost 3-1 in the postseason in the divisional series to the St. Louis Cardinals, so their last playoff run was rather short-lived. Their manager actually was Bruce Bochy, of all people, so right before he went to the San Francisco Giants and won 3 World Series championships, he was actually in coaching the San Diego Padres. So there are some throwback names to be said on this 2006 team for the San Diego Padres. So I'm just going to go through some of the names. I'm going to go through their starters, and then, if there's anyone that I see that really sparks some some nostalgia, I'll say. So their starting lineup was that catcher, a 37-year-old Mike Piazza, was their starting catcher for 120. He played in 126 games. Adrian Gonzalez was their first baseman. Agon, shout out him, 156 games. Nobody on this team actually cracked 100 RBIs, which is insane. Kind of wild to think about. Only one person, which was Agon, who batted above 300. Josh Barfield at second. Khalil Green at shortstop. Major throwback there. Vinny Castilla was their starting third baseman for a little bit. He only played 72 games that year. So I think they had Jeff Blum or Mark Bellhorn starting at third base that year. I'm just going based off games played. It was probably Mark Bellhorn. So you have him. Yeah, 38-year-old Luis Castilla. So Dave Roberts was in left field, and yes, it was that exact Dave Roberts, the coach of the Los Angeles Dodgers, was starting in left field the last time the San Diego Padres made the postseason. And then to round out the outfield, you had a 33-year-old Mike Cameron and a 35-year-old Brian Giles. I forgot Brian Giles even existed, to be completely honest. Other notable names on this team, Ryan Klesko. You had Russell Branyan. This is absolutely insane, the fact that they have not made a postseason this long. Mark Bellhorn, you got Eric Young Jr. I don't think anybody really, I don't recognize any of these. Termel Sledge. I remember Termel Sledge. He had some hype on him for about 6 weeks. Going to their pitching staff, number one ace, Jake Peavy. You had Jake Peavy, who absolutely was the ace of aces in San Diego for a long, long time. I remember every time I was getting a video game, whenever I played, Jake Peavy, whether it was, MVP Baseball or, MLB The Show, it was a wrap. I just could not do a thing against Jake Peavy. And, he was a pretty, he was up there. He won a couple Cy Youngs, and it was a very important piece of the, the San Francisco Giants World Series runs. So, shout out to Jake Peavy on a great career. He was 25 years old at the time. They had Woody Williams, who was 39 years old. Chris Young, the 6'10 pitcher, who was pretty much just famous for being tall. He had a pretty good run with the Texas Rangers, I think it was. Clay Hensley, Chan-Ho Park, David Wells. Alan Embry was on this team. Man, this is some throwbacks. Trevor Hoffman was 38 years old. I would say the second best closer of all time. It's kind of hard to, it's kind of hard knowing that this guy was the second best closer of all time. But then Mariano Rivera had one pitch and completely dominated everybody. So, shout out to Trevor Hoffman on his good career. But, yeah, so they had all of that going on. Let's see. Can I see the entire playoffs that year? Can I see that postseason? NL Divisional Series. Let's go postseason history. Okay, so 2006. Oh yeah, 2006. The Cardinals, they won the World Series that year. Forgot about that. So the Padres lost to the eventual World Series champions. So the playoffs looked like this. So we had the Padres versus the Cardinals, and you had the New York Mets face the Dodgers. And let's see. So Dodgers, and then it was Cardinals versus Mets. Cardinals ended up beating the Mets, going to the World Series. You had the Oakland A's and the Minnesota Twins, Detroit Tigers, New York Yankees. Looks like the Athletics took care of the Twins in the first round. So in the ALCS was the Detroit Tigers and the Oakland A's. The A's got bounced, I remember, off the big Maglio Ordonez home run. I remember that one. That was insane. And then you had the Cardinals-Tigers World Series, where the eventual World Series MVP, the one, the only, David Eckstein, he took over that series, I guess if you want to use the words took over. But yeah, I remember that. That was a really fun team to watch. They had Taguchi, Jim Edmonds, Juan Encarnacion, Scott Rowland, Eckstein, Pujols, Yadier Molina was only 23 at the time. Insane. But one thing I wanted to talk about with all you guys is I went back and I looked at some of the crazy headlines that were happening during 2006. So in 2006, for everybody who's around my age, Hannah Montana debuted on the Disney Channel. That is right. Hannah Montana's first episode came out in 2006, along with 30 Rock, Dexter, and Ugly Betty. The number one of the songs that topped the Billboard charts was Mariah Carey's Don't Forget About Us. That song, like, a huge banger. I'm a big Mariah Carey guy. I listen to Mariah Carey at, more than I probably should, but I don't care. No shame in my game. Justin Timberlake's Future Sex, Love Sounds, and Beyonce's B-Day were two of the best-selling albums of the year. Mark Zuckerberg was in college and had just made Facebook expand to U.S. universities, then moved to international student networks. He finally ended up switching the open registration in 2006. So September of 2006, Facebook became, available for anybody 13 and with a valid email address. So the Padres have not made the postseason since the literal invention of Facebook. And now Facebook pretty much runs the world. In February 2006, Dick Cheney shot his friend on a quail hunting trip in South Texas Ranch. Side note, I remember when that news story came out, that was one of the most insane news stories of all time. It was like just an accidental misfiring where Dick Cheney shot his friend, and man, it was made to seem like the world was ending. I was like, his friend ended up being okay. I hope he did. I was 11 at the time, but I just remember that as every time I walked into my parents' living room and they were watching the news, it was all about how Dick Cheney shot his friend. Most insane time ever. Sacha Baron Cohen's Borat came out, and Sacha Baron Cohen also won the Golden Globe for Best Actor, Musical or Comedy. Crazy to think that he won for Borat, because Borat is such an insane movie. Kids, do not go watch that one. Wait until you're older. Also, fun fact, if you haven't already seen, but Sacha Baron Cohen is actually in the process of filming Borat 2. So I'm kind of excited for that one. I actually really liked Borat, but I don't think Borat 2 is going to be, as good. Also, not to drop the mood or anything, but 2006 was also the year that Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, died from the sting from the stingray. Big RIP to Steve Irwin. It's crazy how long that man's legacy's lasted. He was just kind of like the Animal Planet guy, and he was a part of some spoofs for a while. But Steve Irwin, man, lasting legacy for a long time. But that guy was very underrated. Big news, for those people who are into celebrity breakups. Reese Witherspoon and her husband got a divorce. Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn broke up, and so did Britney Spears and Kevin Federline, which that started a whole snowball effect of just random stuff that was happening within celebrity culture that is not safe to talk about on a podcast that's meant for all ages. So I'm not going to do it. But for anybody who was around at that time, you remember how wild it was. Just all these paparazzi pictures were coming out, and how insane it was. I'll move on from that. Mel Gibson, he just put out, I think The Passion of the Christ had just came out, and that he went on his his entire like racial rant after his DUI, that was absolutely nuts. I could not believe that. That was insane. Moving on, because no one really wants to talk about any of that right now. Let's go to the top. I looked up the top 10 movies of the year 2006 just based off gross income. So these are just off the movies that were made. Side note, a lot of these are kids movies, and that's because kids can watch the same movie over and over and over again every day and not feel any type of way about it. So a lot of these are kids movies. But the number one highest grossing movie of the year was Pirates of the Caribbean 2. Number 2 was Cars. Number 3, X-Men Last Stand. Number 4 was The Da Vinci Code. Number 5, Superman Returns. Number 6, Ice Age Meltdown. Then you got Happy Feet, Over the Hedge, Casino Royale, and rounding out the top 10 was Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. Easily my favorite movie on this entire list. The Ballad of Ricky Bobby is a total classic, and I swear it was one of those movies that you watched every time you went to your friend's house for the entire like calendar year of 2007. And I think it was the movie that everybody played until Step Brothers came out, and when like Step Brothers took its place, and it was like every time you went to your friend's house for an entire year, 2 years, it was like, oh, what do you want to do? Oh, let's watch Step Brothers. I honestly don't think I've watched the movie Step Brothers all the way through beginning to end since 2008, and I can still recite pretty much the entire movie. That's how much everybody was watching it back in the day, because Will Ferrell was on the hottest of hot streaks. Top 10 Billboard songs of the year. I know they said that Mariah Carey had one. She had a big run at the top 10, but she didn't actually end the year in the top 10. So I'm going to go 10-1 on top 10 songs of the year by Billboard. So you had at number 10, you had Beyonce and Slim Thug's Check on It. Justin Timberlake's Sexy Back at number 9. You had Chameleonaires' Riding Dirty. Chameleonaires' Riding Dirty came out last time the Padres. Oh my god, this is like, what an insane world we were living in at that time. You got at number 7, Crazy by Gnarls Barkley was out. Number 6 was Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten. Wild. You got number 5, Shakira's Hips Don't Lie. Number 4, you got You're Beautiful by James Blunt. Number 3 was Promiscuous Girls by Nelly Furtado. Number 2 was Sean Paul's Temperature. And number 1 was hands down the worst song ever made, I Will Die on This Hill. I don't care what anybody has to say. If you play this song around me, we are fighting. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. My mom had this as a ringtone for forever, and my mom was one of those people who would not pick up the phone until the ringtone was almost all the way through. And so you had to listen to the song every single time that she got a call from either a friend, a telemarketer, just anything. You had to listen to the song every time. So if anybody plays this song around me, rage. You're getting nothing but rage. And his Bad Day by Daniel Powter was the number 1 song in America in 2006. Man, what a horrible time. Like, I was honestly thinking that this was so crazy that this was happening at that time. Man, that song was bad. I cannot believe how bad that song is. Let me go back and let's compare and contrast the 2006 Padres and the 2018 Padres just to see, just compare stats from their best players and, like all that kind of stuff. So, because I still got a few minutes left in this segment, let's see. So, like I said, there was 2 people on this team are batting more than 300, better than the 2006 squad. Let's see, the league leader, or the team leader in homers was Agon with 24. Team lead in home runs, Manny Machado 16. This guy played a third of the games that they were playing, and he's only off by 8. Absolutely nuts. Let's check out the RBI list. So number 1 RBI is also Manny Machado with 46. Number 1 RBI getter is Mike Cameron with 83, tied with Brian Giles. A little more than halfway in a third of the games. This is absolutely crazy. Let's see. So this team, the Padres currently this year have two players that are under 100 OPS plus. Let's check this other. They have 3 players that were under 100 OPS plus, and it was the ancient Vinny Castillo, who had 54, then Khalil Green and Josh Barfield had 96 and 97 respectively. Austin Hedges only has a 62 OPS plus, and Tommy Pham has a 72 OPS plus. Nothing too great. Insane how the world has changed. I could not believe it going back on it, but all I can really say is I am so excited the Padres are in the postseason. 3 changes in logos. They had a color change. I mean, absolutely insane. They still, according to Baseball Reference, they still only have a 3.4% chance of winning the World Series, but they are my favorites to win the World Series. I am rooting for them hardcore to win the championship. And all right, everybody, I will be taking a quick break. I will be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right, everybody, we are back. Thank you so much for sticking around. So basically how I am going to set up this next segment is like we've been saying this whole time. This is the last week of the regular season. So basically, I am on ESPN.com, and we are looking at the toughest and easiest schedules of the final week. And then I'm going to go and speak to you guys about free agents who can boost their stocks in October. Because, it's going to be a wacky year. Everything's going to be going down. We don't know what the significance of the winter meetings are going to look like. Normally it's like baseball's national holiday where, we're looking at the winter meetings as like, okay, things are going to go down, moves are going to be made, what's going to happen, is our team finally going to be a contender after all these years? We don't know. So basically, after this segment, I'm going to break that down just to see, because, like George Springer is going to be a free agent. There's a lot of big free agent names, and, we need to see like who's going to be battling in the postseason, and, a rough postseason for some of these guys can, really throw the numbers down. But the toughest remaining schedule for a team that has yet to clinch a playoff berth is the Miami Marlins. So their week is looking horrible. They have 7 games left in the season. They got 4 games against the Braves in Atlanta and 3 games versus the Yankees in New York. So they have 7 road games against 2 of the hottest teams in the game. Like, the pitching staff for the Braves has been okay, but their offense has been absolutely nuts. They're brave. They've won 7 of their last 11 to have a 3-game lead in the NL East. But this is also something that could be a pretty big deal, because an only 3-game lead. You got 4 games on the road. Granted, in Atlanta, the Braves are probably going to do pretty well. But there's still a chance. There is still a chance for the Miami Marlins to overtake the Braves for first place in the NL East. The Marlins are 3-3 against the Braves in 2020. And, they'll be, we'll see how it goes, I guess. I mean, they're definitely going to have Max Fried throwing, so I don't think that the Miami Marlins are actually going to overtake the Braves. And then the Yanks, they're averaging an 8.5 runs per game during their 10-game winning streak. Absolutely nuts that they're doing that. They're right when we were about to count them out, they just started just ripping homers left and right and just could not be stopped. It was absolutely insane. Number 2 is the Mariners. So we were talking about the Mariners. They have 3 games versus the Astros, big series coming up, and then they actually have 4 games in Oakland. They only showed 2 on Baseball Reference, but they have a 4-game series against the Oakland A's. 3 games at home versus the Astros. Maybe they get some home field advantage. They can really do some damage there. Get within, if they sweep, they can get within 1 game of the playoffs and then go into Oakland. And Oakland has all the incentive to just tank those games. Like, there's no reason for Oakland to actually, even try with those games, because the only real bat that could kill them is Kyle Lewis. And Kyle Lewis is a rookie. He's not going to go into the postseason and just start, turning into Ken Griffey Jr. I could see one. And especially with, the George Springer and all these guys that are going in to free agency at the end of the year, and they have something to prove. If, the Houston Astros do not make the playoffs, that would be hilarious. So we'll see how that goes. I'm rooting heavily for the Seattle Mariners. If you thought that the freaking San Diego Padres have not been in the postseason in a world and a half, the Seattle Mariners have the longest playoff drought in pro sports at 19 consecutive years. And hopefully, my God, hopefully that can change. I am rooting heavily for the Seattle Mariners. Number 3, you have the Cincinnati Reds. So the Cincinnati Reds have 3 games versus the Brewers and 3 games versus the Twins in Minnesota. Now, the Twins are going to come out, and they're not going to have any any give in what they're going to be doing. They're going for the kill because they do not, for anything, want to play the Yankees. The Yankees, we went over this last week, where the Yankees are just like the logo on the helmet on the field. It's just a here we go again moment, and they're defeated before they even get off the bus. And that's exactly what's happening. They're definitely going to be right now where the seeding is. They're going to be playing the New York Yankees. So Minnesota's going to come out and do all that they can to change that. Maybe they tank. So they play the White Sox instead of the Yankees, but we'll see how that goes. The Milwaukee Brewers, that's going to be a bloodshed series. They need to take those games from the Brewers. The Brewers are tied for the 8th spot in the in the playoffs. So they really need to put their foot on their necks and get them up out of here. But it's gonna be interesting how they divide their pitching staff with Luis Castillo, Sonny Gray, and Trevor Bauer. Like, who's going to throw against which team, or if they go off the whole 3 days rest and really prepare for the postseason that way. Number 4 is the Giants. They have 4 games against the Rockies, who are nipping at their heels actually to get into the postseason. They're not technically out of it yet, even though they're kind of far out. They're only two games back, but no, these 4 games against the Rockies are huge, and then they have 4 games against the Padres, which really doesn't matter to anybody but them because of because obviously the Padres have made the postseason. But the Giants, they've lost 4 out of their last 7, and they're looking for their first playoff berth since they won the World Series in they didn't win the World Series in 2016. They last won in 2014. Yeah, so last playoff appearance since 2016. They're 16-9 at home in 2020. They're 2-4 against the Rockies and 1-5 against the Padres this year. So they have a pretty steep hill to climb, especially if they're trying to solidify their place in the postseason. Number 5, you have the Toronto Blue Jays. The Toronto Blue Jays, they need to win I think their magic number is only like 2 to get into the postseason. Let's see. Let me go to Baseball Reference and see where they're at. I don't know why I even click off Baseball Reference. I'm on that page all the freaking time. Let's see. Toronto, they're 4 games up. They're 4 games up on Seattle. They're tied with Houston for the 7th and 8th spot. So yeah, they just got to win one of these games. The Orioles are 4.5 games out, so they're really not out of it much. So, if they blow some of these games against the Yankees, which are very capable of doing, and then, they go into we could see the Orioles and the Blue Jays battling it out in a playoff, like, winner goes to the playoffs type situation. That would be not only unexpected, but absolutely insane, especially since the Orioles their over-under for the season was, like, set at 20 games, and they've already beat that. I think they're at like 23 or something like that. I put them for under, so if you guys bet on that, I am sorry, but who expected this? I mean, come on. And number 6, you got the Brewers. They got the 3 games against the Reds, and they got 5 games in St. Louis against the Cardinals. Daniel Vogelbach had a 2-homer game the other day. I don't see this team making the playoffs. I'm just going to come out and say it. I don't think they're good enough to make the postseason. I think that they're just hanging on for dear life. They got the rebrand, they got the cool uniforms and all that kind of stuff. But if you're telling me that they're going to beat the Reds, I honestly don't believe it. Moving on, we have the Mets. The Mets have 3 games against the Rays, 4 games against the Nationals. I don't know why they consider the Nationals to be like that big of a deal. The Nationals, like, they gave up on the season before the season even started, and even then, the Phillies have the same exact schedule. They're right behind them, tied for 7th as well. 4 games against the Nationals, then 3 games against the Rays. So, the Mets and the Phillies are really battling it out for the spot to get into the postseason, and they have the exact same schedule. The Mets, they've lost 13 of their last 22 since August 29th. They've and the Phillies, they're around 500 this month, and they're 6-0 this season against the Nationals. So if they're able to complete a 10-game sweep against the Nationals for the entire season, the Phillies will solidify themselves in the postseason, which is nice. Moving on to the easiest, the Houston Astros. Like we went over, they had the 3 games in Seattle against the Mariners, and they have 4 games against the Rangers in Arlington, and the Rangers are the second or third worst team in baseball. So, yeah, with a whopping .391 win percentage, the Astros are looking steady as, locks to get into the postseason unless, catastrophe strikes. Then you got the St. Louis Cardinals. They have 3 games against the Royals in Kansas City. They have their 5 games against the Brewers. Their opponent's win percentage is .461, below 500. Looking pretty good for the boys in powder blue, I could call them, in St. Louis. St. Louis, I think they're always a lock to get into the postseason. If they miss the postseason, it's more shocking than anything. And then lastly, the Padres have one of the easiest schedules, but since they already clinched, it doesn't really matter. They have 2 games against the Angels and 4 games against the Giants. So let's look at some free agents. So I think one of the biggest free agents that has the most room to grow from, I would say, he's a number 2 pitcher to this guy could be the head of the best staff in baseball, is Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer, I think he's my Cy Young Award winner in the NL. I love Max Fried. He's had a great year. I love Yu Darvish. He's had a great year, but Trevor Bauer has been can't-miss baseball. He's absolutely dominated everyone, and if he's able to find a way to just completely dominate these last week of the season and figure out how to get the Cincinnati Reds into the postseason, and then is able to really put in a good effort in the postseason, really get, maybe if they even get to the bubble and he has about 3 good ace-like starts in the postseason, Trevor Bauer could get, I wouldn't say Garrett Cole money, but he will get paid this upcoming season, and no one can really say anything otherwise. Michael Brantley, he's up there. He's had a pretty bit, he's been pretty disappointed He's been, or should I say, he's been a disappointment in the last 3 series with the Indians in 13, 17, and 18. He did play okay for the Astros last season, but if he's able to make it to the postseason this year, he really needs to put in some big numbers so we can get another massive contract. Because Michael Brantley is a DH, getting older. He's a great fit, especially if the NL adapts the the universal DH. I feel like the sky's the limit for Michael Brantley. And he can play until he's 40. He's going to be a great option. The guy just hits. That's all he does. He just hits over and over again. Hits. Another good one, Didi Gregorius. Didi Gregorius signed a 1-year, $14 million deal with the Phillies, and this dude has been absolutely insane. He has more, he's lowering his strikeout percentage. He's upping his walks percentage. He still has the power. The Yankees kind of gave up on him last year. Didi Gregorius, if he has a big postseason for the Philadelphia Phillies, look for him to cash in. DJ LeMahieu had a 2-year, $24 million deal, severely underpaid. I mean, he's been at the top of the batting title race for the past 2 seasons. He's top 5 in OPS this year. DJ LeMahieu can absolutely get paid, especially if, he's the leader of the Yankees lineup going probably to the LCS this year. That's what I would say. The next one that they put, Marcell Ozuna. Listen, Marcell Ozuna, yes, his stock can go very high, but his stock is high as anyone's going into the postseason this year. Alex Anthopoulos, do what's right. Re-sign Marcell Ozuna, because my God, can this guy rake. We need him. We have to have him. And if we have a universal DH, lock him up for 6 years. 5 years. 5 years of Marcell Ozuna as the DH. I think we can win a World Series. JT Realmuto. I think JT Realmuto. They say he's the consensus number 1 player on the market. Absolutely. This guy just hits tanks. I don't think his stock can go any higher. George Springer is a big one. Masahiro Tanaka really needs to have a good season because, he's not... I don't think he's going to be, really highly sought after as a number 1. He can pretty much get some good money going into maybe a number 2 spot. I could see him. I don't think he'll ever be a number 1. If the Blue Jays actually make it to the postseason and have a decent season, Robbie Ray, he's had horrible seasons the past couple years. He had a 7.84 ERA last year, then got traded to Toronto, and then he has a 5.94 in his 4 outings with Toronto. He's just not pitching that great. And if we know anything from sports, one good postseason series, and you can get a mess of money for no real reason other than you played pretty well in this postseason. Maybe we can figure it out. Kind of like if anybody remembers A.J. Burnett. I feel like A.J. Burnett was that guy. He was right out of the league. No one really was caring anymore. It was his last stop because he was mad cheap. They took him to Pittsburgh, and they tweaked some things, and then next thing you know, he has a 5-year contract coming to him and is a really good pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So who knows? Maybe Robbie Ray could be the next A.J. Burnett, which isn't really saying much. All right, everybody, I'm going to be taking my last break, and I will be right back to go over the series to watch for the week. I know I already kind of went over that too a little bit, but we got to do our deep dive. I'm going to be right back after these words.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
All right, everybody, let's close this episode out like we always do. So, you know what it is. I have the ESPN schedule open for MLB and just going through the looks. I don't know what it is about this, but the day that the episode normally comes out, the pitching matchups aren't great, but the day after it comes out, the pitching matchups are insane. Like, there are so many good pitchers throwing on Wednesday, but for Tuesday, you got some good throwers here and there. Like, you got Garrett Cole versus Tanner Roark, the Yankees and the Toronto Blue Jays. That's going to be on ESPN. Brett Anderson versus Sonny Gray is a pretty good matchup. You got Jose Urena. He's definitely going to hit Ronald Acuna because he does it every single time. I really hope that if he does hit Ronald Acuna, I just hope that they actually suspend him, because this dude, Acuna was on a record tear last year, and Urena hit him in the forearm, and he was out for a week. And then the first at bat he had against Urena again, he took him deep, which was a major just middle finger to him. But I was like, how many times are you gonna allow this one dude to hit our best player every single time he plays him? Like, every time he's on fire, Jose Urena hits him directly in the arm. It happens every single time, and I guarantee you it's going to happen on Tuesday. So keep an eye out for that. Urena versus Cole Hamels. See if Cole Hamels can bounce back, because he had a pretty rough start in his first start of the year last week. Blake Snell versus Seth Lugo. Blake Snell, obviously, he's must-watch TV. But Seth Lugo, he's nothing to really write home about. Baltimore, Boston. That's only really big for Baltimore fans, because they're still trying to, play themselves into that position to where, they can play the Toronto Blue Jays in a, winner goes to the playoff type situation. So Keegan Aiken versus Nick Pivetta. I don't know either of those names. Sorry if I'm sleeping on you guys, but yeah, I don't know any of those names. You got Detroit versus Minnesota, which is going to be great. You got Tariq Skubal versus currently undecided. Tariq Skubal he's a fun pitcher to watch. I do like Tariq Skubal. Detroit, maybe I was a year early on you guys, because I tend to be a year early on a lot of people, but Tariq Skubal, I'm pumped for him. And then they have an even better pitching matchup going tomorrow, but I'll get to that in a little bit. Let's see. Brady Singer is going to be on the mound for the Kansas City Royals. He's a real high spot. Brady Singer, everybody knows him. He's the pitcher from Florida who was absolutely dominant in his career with the Florida Gators, and then comes to the MLB and is pretty dominant in the MLB. He's really fun to watch. I really do love watching him. I don't know where my love of watching pitchers came from. I normally don't like pitchers. They're kind of weird. In every aspect, they're some of the weirder people I've ever met in my life. But I do actually like to watch pitchers ball out from time to time. You got Zach Davies versus Griffin Canning. That's going to be a pretty good matchup. I mentioned this earlier in the show. Houston, Seattle, Framber Valdez versus LJ Newsome. That's going to be a good pitching matchup. I think the matchup of the entire day is Oakland versus the Dodgers. It's going to be on ESPN. Frankie Montas versus Dustin May. Dustin May looks like he's going to be a problem in a few years. Like, when he's like, he wasn't even a big name coming into this year, and he's just absolutely carved teams up. He looks like a huge piece going into the postseason. Like, Dustin May is one great pitcher, and I can't wait to see how he progresses. Just within the Dodger organization. He's the token redhead. I mean, as a redheaded guy, I'm a huge Dustin May guy, but with the big league lettuce that he's got on his head, and just the movement on his 100-mile-an-hour two-seam, and just how kind of energetic he is on the mound. Like, when he gives up a ball that he thinks is hard hit, he's jumping around. He's very, he's just very passionate about pitching, and you can tell in his, in his games, and it's a lot of fun to watch. I really do love watching Justin May. And then you got Kyle Freeland versus Drew Smiley to end out Tuesday, 8:45 p.m. Central, Colorado at San Francisco. Now, Wednesday, this is the day with the heavy hitters on the mound. First of all, you're starting the day off with Chris Paddock. Chris Paddock is going to be playing. He's going to be facing Jaime Barria of the Angels. So you got Chris Paddock to start the day. Let's see. You got Lucas Giolito versus Zach. Lucas Giolito versus Zach Plesac. That's a great matchup. Masahiro Tanaka is going to be on the mound. You got Adrian Hauser versus Trevor Bauer. That's a big matchup. You got Greinke versus Nick Margevicius. Sure, we're going to go with that. Zach Greinke on the mound. Margevicius, I've never seen him throw, but I'm going to be watching. You got Kyle Hendricks on the mound. Sixto Sanchez is going to throw. Tyler Glasnow. Steven Matz. Casey Mize is playing Kenta Maeda. That's my matchup of the day right there. That's the game I'm tuning into. Casey Mize versus Kenta Maeda. I cannot wait. You got Carlos Martinez, Danny Duffy, Sean Manaea. You got Julio Urias throwing against Sean Manaea. Like, what more could you want as fans of the game? Like, these games, it's getting down to the wire. Like, you need clutch performance after clutch performance, and it's coming. And it's coming from all these guys, and it's incredible. I hope it's Max Fried, because the Braves are undecided on who they're throwing against Sixto Sanchez. God, man, I hope it's Max Fried. Either Max Fried or Ian Henderson just have the two futures of baseball going up against each other. I think that would be sick to watch. Nathan Eovaldi is going to be throwing. I don't know how great he's done this year. I don't know if he's back to like earlier Nathan Eovaldi when he wasn't that good, or if he was World Series Nathan Eovaldi, where he's absolutely carving people up, and there's just no chance of hitting him. Chase Anderson is facing off against Masahiro Tanaka. You know, everybody knows that's a big series for the Toronto Blue Jays. I don't have to state that over and over again. Danny Duffy versus Carlos Martinez is a big matchup. I love that. Danny Duffy, I feel like, is underrated just because he's in Kansas City and not many people watch the Royals. And Carlos Martinez is back as a starter versus St. Louis. He intrigues me so much because I have no idea if he's like if he's just like going to be their bullpen piece, or if he's their starter, or if he's just everywhere in between. Like, Carlos Martinez, I think, is probably the most versatile pitcher in baseball, just because he closes games, he starts games, he can come in the 6th, in the 7th, in the 8th. Like, it's just, you never know when Carlos Martinez could be coming into a game, but he could come in for every game, and it's kind of wild. But yeah, let's see. My game of the day, Casey Mize, Kenta Maeda, of course. You got Detroit, Minnesota. Other big matchup, those two teams clinched. It's not really that big of a matchup. The A's and the Dodgers, like, if they would have played that earlier, that would have been way sweeter. Let's see. Other game to watch. Oh yeah, that's right. Lucas Giolito versus Zach Plesac. Duh. AL Central always has been pumping out game after game to watch this year. The AL Central has been my favorite division. It is the most competitive division. I love that division, and I kind of hope that one of the teams from that division wins the World Series, or at least represents the American League in the World Series. I think that would be absolutely insane. All right, everybody. That is going to be our show. I will be back on Friday with a brand new episode. Enjoy your week. Enjoy your families. And be sure to enjoy baseball. You can follow me on Instagram at EvanWorley23. You can play me in Tap Baseball if you're bored. The nickname is EvanWorley23. And I would like to thank you for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you to please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review, because it really helps us out. And if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. part of the Golden State Media Concepts podcast network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts podcast network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.